Welcome to our final episode of season 14 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm Lisa Stone, your host, and I could not think of a better guest to end this season with than Duey Evans. Those of you who have been following for a while have hopefully seen or heard my past discussions with him. During the lockdown of COVID, Duey and I were doing weekly discussions that are posted on our YouTube channel. And he is one of those coaches that I just continue to learn from. Communication has been at the heart of Parenting Aces since day one. And this episode is all about communication. Duey has been really diving deep into how we communicate, how we can communicate better, and how we can use those skills to better educate our coaches to help our players get better out there. So I'm thrilled to have him on. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you will take time to do a deep dive as well into my past conversations with Duey. We'll have links in the show notes to Duey's website, to his contact information, so be sure and check that out. But for now, this is it for season 14. We will be back on the air with new episodes in January. So take the next few weeks, pick up episodes that you might have missed, reach out to me. I'm here to answer questions and enjoy my conversation with Coach Duey Evans. I am so thrilled to end season 14 with you as my guest, Duey Evans. Welcome back to the podcast, and I cannot wait to dig into this one.
It's a pleasure being back, Lisa. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to having this chat.
Me too. I have been just gobbling up all this content you've been putting out. I've been reposting it all on our website and sharing it as much as I can. I think you are onto something so unique and so thought-provoking, and something that could really shake up the way the coaching industry, not just the tennis coaching industry, but the coaching industry as a whole, does business. And I'm super excited to dig into this.
I think there's a need for education in general, right? So we can even go beyond coaching and just talk about education and how we're moved past its usefulness. That education in general in the US is based upon a Prussian system, which is about creating orderly society. So we've taken away creativity. We have bells and whistles. We have lines of chairs and desks and kids standing in lines and adults standing in lines. And I think those days are gone. We've got to get back to the creativity part of it and giving kids agency to be able to make mistakes, and coaches to encourage something other than compliance.
Yeah, and spitting back, just that rote memorization and just spitting back the facts that you've been taught in class, as opposed to teaching critical thinking skills, teaching kids how to really think about things and evaluate what they're hearing and its appropriateness to the way they want to live their life. And obviously there are things that are appropriate at the young toddler, I guess, early verbal stages, and other things that are more appropriate as our children get older and move into teen years, college age, adulthood, all of that. And I'm sure we'll dive into all of that. But I just feel like we are at this place as a society, and I'm not sure it's uniquely American. I kind of get the feeling that this is a global issue, just from the people I talk to, of needing a different way of presenting information that is fair, that is, I won't say unbiased, because I think anytime there's a human involved, you have bias involved, but encouraging that critical thinking piece, which I think has been missing from our education system. Really, I don't think it was there when I was in school. Do you have a recollection of being taught that way?
No, I did. I grew up in Concord, Mass, and so nursery school had that. I went to a nursery school that was very much about that. So I had parents that were very much into education. but then it went away. The system is the same largely worldwide. It was created for the Industrial Revolution, where we needed people to respond well to bells and whistles and be on time, and memorization. We trained people to operate in the middle. So the people that are, good worker bees, there was all about society creating those types of people. And we've now reached the place where we got to bring back creativity. And maybe we never should have lost it, but what I'm finding is what it took to be that great asker of questions, the Socratic method, took great teachers. And what won out was something that allowed mediocrity at the teaching end to come out with something that was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay.
Yeah, we got by. But now you've kind of created this platform, not kind of, you have created this platform and have been doing a lot of, it seems to me, thinking out loud by writing, and have evolved your thoughts into a framework that you're calling, don't let me mispronounce it, communiplasticity. Is that right?
You got it. That's exactly it. So it is derived, like a lot of people know the term neuroplasticity. It is the one that happens. People have strokes and they figure out their brains rewire itself to be able to create new connections. And so that's on the receiver side. But we can't count on people on the receiver side getting it. So communiplasticity is about, on the sender side, being able to wire and code the connection outgoing from you to match what the other person wants to receive, so that we're not reliant upon the receiver taking it. Because I felt like that's the true disconnect in a lot of junior development activities, is we get to a place where there's a mismatch in how people are communicating, and then the adult grows frustrated with, oh, this kid doesn't care, or they don't want to learn, or they're incapable of learning. And then the child senses that, gets a little bit frustrated, the adult gets more frustrated, and they resort to volume, which is kind of what we often when we think the person's not listening. No, it's amazing how often we talk to somebody who speaks a foreign language and they don't understand us, and then we speak louder. Like, no, it's not, you can't hear me, you don't understand me. And so, what happens then? Adults raise their voice. Kids are like, this teacher's yelling at me. It's no longer fun. And then they go find something else to do. And if it happens enough times, they leave youth sports entirely. And so the goal of Communiplasticity Solutions, Inc. is to solve that problem. That's what we're digging into.
So, what's interesting about this from where I sit as a parent who talks to a lot of other parents and who talks to a lot of coaches is what you're proposing requires a lot more preparation and a lot more work on the part of the giver, so you call it a giver or a sender and a receiver. Yeah. Okay. So it requires a lot more work on the part of the sender to look at the receiver as an individual, assess that receiver's body language.
Yeah, exactly. So the poor sender has to actually pay attention. They have to go beyond themselves and see if what they're sending out is actually being received by the other side. So have I overwhelmed them? Are they blanking over because it just went right past them? Looking for those signs is the key to the whole thing. And
looking for them, recognizing them, and then having the tools to change the message coming out to fit what the receiver can actually take in.
So here's how it came about. And I've been spending since January pretty much figuring myself out. So looking backwards, connecting dots, finding where I failed, and really looking at where I failed, so where I could have done better. A lot of it came down to a relationship I had with a young lady by the name of Duey Evans. And Corianne had been 2 in the country, won the girls 18 clay court singles and doubles at 15, junior US Open semifinalist. And I coached her once she turned pro, and she was an IMG client. And I consider myself a pretty good coach. And she was an excellent player. And it just kind of didn't work somehow. And the relationship was great, but the communication was lacking in a way. And we figured out several years later, after she retired, she came and worked for me in Dallas as part of a program that I developed called Synastia, where we're trying to tick all the boxes. And so we all took Myers-Briggs, and it doesn't matter what the type thing was. But what we found out is that she and I were exact opposites, where I am the kind of person that wants to try things just because it's fun to try things. She was the kind of person who was needing information, needing to almost know without fail that this would give her an immediate benefit before she would try it, right? So I'm here saying, just try it. You know, you're out here playing, doesn't really matter. You're not playing Sharapova, you're playing 350 in the world, and just try this. And she's like, nope. And I kind of figured it out a little bit before that. She was playing 75K in Cary, North Carolina, and she was playing her junior nemesis, girl by the name of Ashley Hockelwood. And Ashley had been 1 in the country when Corianne was 2 coming out of juniors. And they were playing on clay. And Corianne had won the first set, and Ashley went up 3-0 in the second set, and they're playing on clay. Corianne, who hit 2 hands on both sides, and I watched her out hit Sharapova on the practice court. But she hit 3 clean drop shot winners in a row, and then proceeded to win that set 6-3. And I was, after the match, I was like, she comes over, I'm like, what was that? Like, you don't ever do stuff like that. You're constantly doing what you told me day one, which is I rip big brown strokes in the corners when somebody, so it looks like they're going to pop it up. I move in, hit a swing volley to win the point. And that's all she would do. And she said to me real clearly, my parents told me, and Ashley as the model, because that was her nemesis, that players are going to back up to absorb my pace. And what I needed to do was to have a drop shot to pull them back to the baseline so that my game could be effective again. Well, because it was the person that she had learned it against, she was happy to apply it. So she knew that it would work, right? That's the key, is she knew this would work. It wasn't me saying, just try it. It was her, this was put in my game at a very early age, specifically for this person. So now I'll use it. I won't use it against anybody else, but this is a use case. Yep, here we go.
That's crazy. Did that frustrate you when she told you that?
I think as much as most things frustrate me, I don't get very frustrated as a coach. It's just, they're all learning experiences. I was a little, maybe frustrated is the word, but I was just like, why no other time? And
Right.
4 years later
also,
or 3 years later, I figured it out.
But you had been telling her to make these changes, right? She didn't want to hear it from you, but she was willing to hear it from others. And it's just so reminiscent. I don't know if you ever watched Modern Family, but there's an episode in Modern Family where Claire and Phil get into a big fight because Phil comes home raving about wedge salads, and Claire was like, oh my God, I've been telling you to eat a wedge salad for years. Why now? And he's like, well, Skip Woosnam told me I should try wedge salad. That's so good. And she's like, ah! You know? And that's exactly what this story sounds like, that, you know, you've been telling her this and she just couldn't hear it until it came from elsewhere.
Well, I think what had happened was she had heard it from her parents at a time in her life that she was being compliant. So she didn't have a choice. Her parents said, here's how we're going to approach this match against this player. And she did it. She saw that it worked. So she got the reinforcement of here's, it works against this person. And then, but somehow it didn't get all the way through to here's a tactic against a type of player, not here's the tactic against Ashley.
Yeah. And so how did you take that in as a coach to help you kind of move forward in the way that you were interacting with your players?
I guess I realized that people are very different, and there was more than one way necessary to be able to craft information. And I wasn't where I am now. It's interesting in my writing. I said the other day, as I was writing, at one point in time, I thought I was probably between an 8.5 and a 9.2 out of 10 as a coach. Now that I recognize that it's about facilitating learning, not just teaching, I'm like at a 7.5. I'm like, okay, so if I'm a 7.5 and I think I was so much better than most people, where does that put most coaches? And so what do we need to do with coach education to be able to bring people up from where they are? That we're not very good. And I think it's the same reasons that we like tradition in tennis. And so we're shy to move away from all white and change scoring systems and all of those things. I think the same thing exists in coach education. Why do we do it? Because that's how we've always done it.
Right. And so now we're seeing our governing body in the coach education field. I've been trying to get someone from USTA to come on this podcast to talk about USTA coaching. Not been successful yet, but I'm not giving up. But what message would you want USTA coaching to hear and integrate if they truly are committed to changing coach education in the US, which we know if we change things here, it's going to trickle out into the world of coaching because US has a lot of influence in the world. What do you want them to hear from you about what we need to be doing differently?
We need to blow it up. That just start all over from scratch. And I think that's where we fail.
Boom.
Is to, yeah, I mean, we fail to do that. So we want to iterate over and over and over again. And so we move closer and closer to as good as it can be doing the thing that we're doing. But if we look at how things evolve generally, the closer we come to perfection, the closer we come to obsolescence. And nobody has really taken on coach education and said, this doesn't work. I mean, I think we did that with red, orange, and green. Nobody figured out how to put that message out to the world so that they could then take it on and recognize what's possible, because I don't think anybody who was sending the message recognized what was possible. And so nobody had that Steve Jobs ability to just believe in something to the place that he could bring other people along enough for them to be able to see what was possible. And we missed that with coach education and red, orange, and green. It went around, and I can't tell you how many quick start coach things I went to. And if you're someone who's coaching at a fairly high level, you're like, this is crap. Why do I want to do crap? And so we missed it. And I think we're missing it now. I don't know what the USTA's platform is going to be like for doing coach education at this point in time. I'm busy designing some things of my own. I wish the best because they have the megaphone, they have a way to communicate it to people. If it's not great, then there will be lots of people exposed to not great. There'll be lots of kids exposed to not great. And one thing about junior tennis is it's a finite amount of time, right? So you can only make so many wrong turns before you're on a path that doesn't lead back to where you hope it would be. And that's where we've got to kind of make sure that we're getting that. And I know that I've seen people talk about we need to have mandatory type things. I think podcast you had several weeks ago with Kyle LaCroix was that. And his talk on coach education and what he believes is necessary. I think some is better than none. The reality is we have too many parrots. We haven't figured out yet how to help people take and synthesize the information to be able to make it their own. We're still at a place where I bet if you go to one of the new USTA coach things, the coaches are going to ask for, what drills can you give, right? As opposed to, what's the concept that's underlying, and here's how you can create a drill for yourself if you understand it. Jorge Capestani, he undoubtedly synthesized all kinds of things, which is why he has all of these drills for people. He undoubtedly created them because he understood the concept of what we're trying to do. And he recognized that most people weren't going to take the time to come up with them themselves. So he's like, okay, here's some for you. And so I hope the USTA figures out how to teach concepts and to get players to have agency where they can own it, where they feel that it's okay to make a mistake as long as they learn, that they ask good questions, that they teach coaches to ask, don't tell. Yeah, I hope.
But do you feel like the way that our current ranking system with USTA and the rating systems out there, whether it's WTN or UTR, stifle a player's willingness to try something for the sake of trying it, and you don't feel like it stifles? Okay.
No.
Okay, help me understand that.
I believe everything is a tool. Everything. You can tell, is this good or is it depends on how you use it. It's a tool. You know, we could say the same thing about nuclear weapons. Huh? It's a tool. I don't know, using it for deterrence or using it to blow up whole cities. I don't know. It can be good, it can be bad. I don't believe that rankings and ratings are inherently good or bad. I believe how we use them is good and bad. And if we're sitting in a house with a parent that spends all of their evenings researching them and wanting to know, based on a tournament, did it move up or move down or where? And this tournament has players that are above. Okay, so there's a good chance to move up, but everybody in this tournament is below. And so therefore, I'm not going to get any benefit out of it. And every loss is going to pull me. Like, who cares? Like, really, seriously, who cares? And so if we understand how the tools work, I think they're neither inherently good nor bad. And that's my belief in all of it. Did I like it when none of that existed? I absolutely loved it. When little Johnny was a tough out because he grounding, he got everything, or Billy was the basher and I had to be able to withstand or whatever. So I played Paulie the push, and that was instead of, somebody who was going to be a good winner or a bad loss. We could have not left that, but that's a long time ago, right? So most of the parents don't even remember when you had to fill out paper entry forms and send in your player record along with it for seeding purposes, because none of that existed anywhere. End of year rankings will come out and you fight thinking, my kid beat this kid and why are they ranked ahead of me? But you didn't see it coming. It wasn't out there for general consumption. But there's no turning back the clock. So now that it's there, what do you do with it?
And what do we do with it? I mean, I think, and using the language of communiplasticity, how do we help families do a better job at utilizing the tools that are available and working in that triangle of player, parent, coach to keep the lines of communication flowing effectively and continuously and usefully to help our players develop to their full potential, because that's the goal of getting into junior tennis. If you're going to compete, the goal is to get as good as you can get for most players.
You think that that's why anybody puts their kid in anything, is to
I don't think that's why they put them in.
There are people who put their kids in things explicitly for them to be the best at it. But I think
no. I'm not saying that's why the parents put them in. I'm saying for the child who decides to start playing tennis tournaments, they're trying to get better and win more, right? I mean, why else compete?
Yeah, I guess the two extremes are choking and tanking, right? So they both kind of look the same. They look almost like somebody's not trying, but if they're truly not trying, that's tanking. And if they're just overly tight because they care so much, then that's choking. And they both look, this outward symptoms of pretty much the same. And so we've got to be better at how do we recognize that. I think that if somebody's tanking, then you got to get their kid out of the sport and just, this isn't for them. They're rebelling against you. So let's recognize that right away, that you're in it as a parent for you. You're not in it for your kid, unless there's something of you want your kid to figure out how to do stuff that they have to do but don't want to do because that's going to be part of life. Okay, I think that's another whole argument that I don't want to get into that one. I'm not equipped for that. It's above my pay grade. But once you get a kid that wants to be in there and they want to get better, I think you don't look at rankings. You look at, am I doing better? I'm beating somebody, that was Vitas Gerulaitis talking about Jimmy Connors. Nobody beats Vitas Gerulaitis 16 times in a row or whatever that number was. Okay, there's improvement, right? So how do we get that? In one of your podcasts, I guess you had Mike Joyce on and talking about that his dad put him in the same tournament, like looked for the person that he couldn't beat, and looking for opportunities to for his kid to figure it out. And I think that's a great way to go about it, if that's what you're doing. And obviously at that point in time, Mike wanted to play tennis and he wanted to be better. And have rivals. We all have that person that's our nemesis. I talked about Corey Ann and Ashley Harperwood, same deal. So I think we use those tools that are available to us. I like the old ranking things because I could kind of go through and look at who the player struggled with, who they beat easily, and knowing enough of the players, I could kind of figure out game style. Okay, so when I didn't know the player, I could figure out you struggle against somebody who takes time away from you, or somebody who gets everything back, or whatever it happens to be. I don't know as we have that at the moment, but I think if we can get back to that as opposed to what UTR, WTN tells us zero other than against a pool of players, they've had whatever modicum of success that they've had. Period. That's all it says. It doesn't say who the opponents were or anything else.
Yeah. I agree. So getting back to coaching and utilizing this big idea of communiplasticity, how do you see coaching education integrating this concept to help coaches do a better job?
Just got deep. I think there needs to be a framework which gives coaches the information to be able to assess what's going on with the player. You don't necessarily do things the same. My great coaches have often said, I treat everyone fair, but not the same. And how do we do that informationally? So how do I know that some people, I just need to design a drill that they can see for themselves. Here's how it works. Some people I need to lay out explicitly. I think one of the things that I found as a coach was always, if I found something initially in the relationship with the new player that I knew I could impact, but I could lay out what that was going to look like. So at the end of today, about 1 out of every 20 is going to feel like you got it, but 15 out of those 20 are going to feel like I don't get it at all. And another 3 or 4 are going to be, okay, I kind of get it. And then at the end of a week, here's what it will be. And here's at the end of 2 weeks, what it will be. And then when it happens, the player's like, oh, okay, you told me it was going to be like this. That's how it is. I guess he knows what he's talking about. And then that builds that place, I think, where someone's more willing to just listen to a suggestion rather than needing all of the data every single solitary time.
So it's a transparency. It's a transparency of the coach saying, this is what we're doing. This is how I expect it to go over this period of time. Stay with me. We're going to get there. And we're going to roller coaster our way to this final product. That same, in my opinion, and listen, this is the underlying reason that Parenting Aces exists, is the coaches have to use that same transparency and that same method of communicating with us, the parents, so that we can build that trust and know what to expect, especially for those who don't come from a competitive sports world or a tennis world, but really just competitive sports in general. And I just think that's so missing.
I think we reward compliance over anything else. And, something I wrote that just went out this week, I think.
I just read that. Yeah.
So we're looking for kids that do as they're told, and those are the good students. I want somebody who's going to ask why. I've often said to kids, if somebody wants to change things, I want you to ask them why. Why should I change this?
You would have loved coaching my kid.
But because too often it's coaches do it because they don't like how it looks. I don't know. Is it effective? Right. That's what I want to know. Does it have limitations that with that grip, can you handle a short low ball and figure out how to get it over the net without sending it off the bottom edge of the frame over the fence? And so those are the things that I want. I used to have kids, the challenge was, because I can't be at every kid's match, was for kids to call me at the end of their match. And when I knew it was really a good conversation, at the end of the conversation, I would say to them, so did you win or lose? Right. So it didn't have anything to do with winning and losing. It had to do with the things that went through their head during the match, when the opponent made an adjustment that they knew the ball was back in their court and they now had to counter what the other person had done, and vice versa. And so that they were keenly aware during that whole period. And so I think getting coaches to train attention is really important.
And how do you do that? How, as a coach, do you do that?
Ask lots of questions. Ask good questions. Ask
What's
questions
a good question?
Well, I think at a very young age, so under 10 years old, I would never ask somebody to rate something on a scale of 1 to 10, because kids that's too abstract for kids.
And they don't have the life experience yet to make comparisons.
So I would ask them things in a way that might lead them a little bit. And so starting out with pretty much true, false, yes, no type questions at a very young age, and then kind of moving it into multiple guess type things, where there are a couple answers that are kind of right, and then one that's absolutely not right, and one that is right. And so getting them to move to that place. And then as they've learned those skills, asking things in much more open-ended ways, where they're essentially essay questions, and getting the person to have to think through it enough. Once you've trained somebody that's the expectation, they prepare for it much better, right? So I think those of us that went to college learned that one of the tricks is figure out what the professor is going to test you on. Are they testing you on the outside materials or the lectures that they do? And so you then spend your time preparing for what you think you're going to see on the test. Well, dealing with any kind of coach or teacher is often a test. And so if you've trained a player that you're going to quiz them on the questions they've asked themselves, they're going to do a better job of asking themselves those questions in real time during a match, during changeovers. What were you thinking at 4-2 after having been broken back, a couple of times? Then they'll start figuring out, I'm going to get asked this, so I might as well figure it out now. I think that's what you want. You want kids that are going to think their way through matches. That's my ultimate goal. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's such an important piece of playing this game well. Like, so many people can hit the ball and can even put it where they want it in the court. But understanding why that's the best place to put the ball at this moment in time, that's the differentiator, right? And if I do this, my opponent's going to do that, which is going to lead me to do this other thing. And it's the whole chessboard concept of thinking several steps ahead. But I think educating coaches to coach in that manner is a really daunting task, because, at least from my experience, there's so many coaches out there that maybe they were great players, maybe they played on tour, maybe they were great collegiate players or great juniors, but the communication piece, they just never really developed. And to convince them that they need that piece in order to continue to be effective as a coach is daunting, I think.
I was going to write something, but I guess I'll just say it here. If I were, if
You
I
heard it
were
here first, folks.
exactly breaking stories on this. If I were interviewing a brand new program for my child, one of the questions that I would be asking the director of the program, the owner, whatever it is what is your plan and your program for educating your coaches? Period. Because I don't care how good your coach is, information becomes stale, becomes old. That if I want a program, if that's important to them, of how are they moving their staff forward? How are they not just using up the physical capabilities or the current mental capacity of the coaches, but trying to expand that? So is there a formal plan in place to do that? And some programs have it, right? So I look at Sport Time and they hired Mike Carroll, right? So that makes sense, did that. I know that at ATA, at one point in time, Jack had Ann Pankhurst here on a regular basis, helping develop curriculum and work with the coaches. How many programs have that? And if you're just a sole proprietor, it's you and an assistant, then my question would be, what are you doing to move yourself forward? Or are you just bringing to the table whatever you already had when I walked in the door? Because I guarantee that my journey is, my child's journey is going to be different than anyone that you've seen. There are others that are very similar, but each one is unique. And so what happens when you run into something that you haven't seen before? Or if you've seen it before, but you struggled with it for 6 months and you think that, oh, players are going to struggle with this for 6 months. And what if it could be solved in a month? Right? So how do you look for that better answer so that you've now not wasted that 5 months? Like when I started writing about mental stuff recently, I started thinking about Ty Kwiatkowski and how Ty struggled at a very young age emotionally and struggled with it all the way till his senior year at UVA when he finally won the NCAA singles title. But what if I could have solved that when he was 11 and I pulled him off the court during boys 12 hard courts in a match that he was winning because he couldn't control himself. And, and I tried and I tried and I tried, but I didn't have the tools because I just didn't know. Thought I did, and had a lot of great people that enlisted as consultants and things like that, but didn't have the answer. But there is an answer, right? So part of what I've been writing about recently, but I just learned that now. If I had known that, and I guess what, Ty's 30, so if I'd known that 19 years ago, maybe he wouldn't have ended up going to college at UVA. Maybe he would have turned pro, which is what he wanted to do at 11 years old, when he was still telling me at 16 that he had to get a lot better real fast if he was going to college. And while UVA was great, 3 team championships while he was there and won the NCAA singles, he would have much rather turned pro and gone to UVA. afterwards with a good planner.
So interesting. I mean, it's funny because my son's 29. He's a year behind Ty, and my husband and I still have that conversation too. What if we had done A, B, and C when he was first exhibiting these behaviors? What would have been different? Or, what if we had known enough to recognize that the coaching needed to change, or, that our way of disciplining needed to change, or whatever it is. I mean, you beat yourself up with the what ifs, what ifs, what ifs, but I think what's valuable about having those conversations is that it helps you kind of work through your thought process at the time, recognize the things you did, maybe, they were errors, but also how they informed who your child ended up becoming, right? So who would Ty have been if he hadn't gone to UVA? Who would my kid have been if he had figured out how to manage his anger at 10 or 11? I mean, but then you look at the person and who they are now, and it's like, well, yeah, there were some struggles, but goodness, I'm proud of who that person turned into.
It's a long road, and I think I know many coaches who I respect, and I've asked them to look at things that they did when they came to visit me, and they did some coach education for my staff, or just had general conversation. I don't think there's a single person that I respect who doesn't look back 5 years and cringe and say, I can't believe I would have done that so differently at this point in time. I think it's when we run into those people that believe I'm doing it the best and it will always be the best. And so they are very, I guess, direct the fixed mindset of this is how I do it.
There's no plasticity there.
Right.
It's rigid.
Yeah, I guess it becomes ossified. So it becomes like bone and hard and whatever. So I think if we're someone as coaches who are constantly looking for answers, and that's what we want. I mean, I've often suggested to parents, instead of finding an old dude that has a great track record and might be near the end and is busy telling people about their track record, I want you to find a young, hungry coach that wants to make a name through helping your child get to where it is that they're trying to go. And that person's going to turn over whatever rocks there are necessary to get the information to bring to it. And therefore, they will both get better along the way. And that player never looks at the coach and says, you were horrible. I mean, other than like they have this long-standing relationship and jokingly, the player as an adult, now they're more peers, and it says, you were really bad back then. But normally what they will say is, all I cared about was that you were going to do whatever you could to find the answers that could help move me forward.
Well, and I don't know if you had a chance to listen to my podcast with Veronica Miroshnichenko, but she talks about that exact thing with her childhood coach, and that they're still in contact and they do have those conversations, and I think that's just being human. I mean, hopefully we're all on a path of growth. Hopefully we're not stagnant and complacent, but I think your point of looking for a coach that's more at the beginning of their career versus at the tail end of their career is a good one. And sometimes it's hard to trust your child to someone who's just getting started, but maybe, and maybe you can help us with this, Dewey. Like, how, as a parent, would you determine if it's a young coach who's hungry to learn and grow versus somebody who is just resting on their laurels of being a great college player or having some success on the pro tour?
Discernment. I wonder if that's trainable, because I feel like it's one of my superpowers. I've figured out who were good people to try to learn from all along, and then cast aside those that I didn't think were, and I think in most cases have proven that they weren't good for me to learn from. They might have been great for somebody else, but didn't match up with what I needed. And I think, as with everything, we're getting back to communication and asking questions. What questions do you ask when you're interviewing a coach? How do we move beyond, give me a list of the players that you coach? And that's
Yeah.
not a good idea. I used to ask when I would hire people, I would say, give me your 3 worst references, because everybody has bad references. And I don't mean as a coach, I just mean as a human being. Like, if everybody likes you, then you're probably somewhere stuck in the middle. You're Mr. Milquetoast, and right? So I don't want that. I want people that are going to live closer to the edges. So we're talking about middle to the middle, and that's kind of where AI is going to be. And so I want people that are thinking at the very beginning, that want to come up with ideas, that want to experiment, that want agency in what they're doing. How do you interview coaches for that? And I think there's probably a series of questions, but again, if I give you a series of questions, now I'm doing the same thing as the coaches with the coach education stuff that are like, give me drills. And it's like, yeah, it's not the drills, dude. It is about, like, how do you figure out, how do you ask questions and are attentive and listening to what's coming back, as opposed to sitting quietly, waiting for your turn to politely waiting for your turn to talk, which is what we've been trained to do. Like, stick your hand up and wait till you get called on. And now I'm busy just wondering, how long do I need to keep my hand up in the air? And I'm not listening to the person who's currently speaking. So how do I create that attentiveness in everything every interaction I have?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
And we all want the easy way, right? And gosh, I remember years ago talking with somebody about, why is Spain producing all these players, and what are the drills they're doing in Spain, or what is, Rafa Nadal doing every day on the practice court? And you go and you watch what Rafa Nadal was doing every day on the practice court, and it looked on its surface exactly the same as what every other player and coach in the world was doing on the practice court. But you had to sit and really watch to find that what set that apart wasn't the actual drill, where the ball was being fed and where it was expected to go, and the technique. It was the intentionality, it was the passion, it was the commitment to doing it until it was right. There were all these unseeable to the naked eye pieces of it, but on its surface, it looked very simple.
I'm not a fanatic. I'm not a fan, because I'm just not fanatical about human beings. But a player that I very much enjoyed watching their career and would love to talk to, someone I've never met, is Andre Agassi. But I find it very interesting that Gil Reyes was a linchpin relationship for Andre. And Andre's thing when Gil said, I don't know anything about tennis in that Las Vegas gym, Andre was like, I don't need, like, I got plenty of people around me who know about tennis. I need whatever, something else. And that Gil Reyes turned out to be that thoughtful human being, a giant person with a soft heart and a keen mind. And so how do we have those types of people around to create thinking human beings, right? Yeah, it's not about, like, you got to do all the other stuff. You got to hit the weights, you got to do the full work fields, you got to do all those other things. But how do you create people that relate to things differently, that are attentive, that, again, come back to the word agency?
So where is communoplasticity heading? What are you hoping to achieve through putting this out in the world?
I'm looking at, so here's where I get mystical to a degree. I grew up in Concord, Massachusetts, so which is the home of the transcendentalists. And so the transcendentalists, for those of you who don't know, are the Alcotts and Thoreaus and Emerson's, Hawthornes of the world. And there are a lot more. So those places, Walden Pond and the Old North Bridge, are all familiar to me. My mom's buried in the cemetery with what's called Author's Ridge. So all the transcendentalists, I'll be there Monday too. They wanted to have consciousness as the key. They didn't believe in it, that the education system of Amos Bronson Alcott, Louisa May Alcott's dad, that he wanted and had, required brilliance from the teacher. But it was about conversation, it was about Socratic learning, and I think it was better. It didn't win out because we're talking about the 1830s, and we needed a system that was going to create great factory workers. That's where we were as a world at that point, the Industrial Revolution. I think that we are moving into the entrepreneurial and technical era, and moving away from the industrial era. So I'm looking to take immunoplasticity and create the systems which move people to be great thinkers, to have ideas. My grandson was here for a couple of days, just left yesterday, and he's 18 months old. And he doesn't have any household that has stairs in it. And he spent the time going up and down the stairs at first very, very, very slowly. And then we got faster and faster, and he experimented with, how do I hold on to a spindle? Does that work? Versus scooching on my belly versus scooching on my butt versus, kind of crawling up and down. Watching him do that and then try to draw connections between other things. I have a house that has a bunch of breakables in it and cameras and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, explore. Like watching him try to make connections between things. I recognize, because I'm so deep in this at the moment, that I could have very easily stifled his creativity by saying, oh no, don't touch, that isn't for you, da da da. And instead I went the other way. And I'm like, okay, so whenever I go, this is all going to be your mom's or, one of my other kids. It's going to belong to, if she wants some of it to go now because you're playing with it, that's great. There are some pictures of things, obviously, that I was like, okay, let's move those out of the way. There were screwdriver and lighter for lighting candles and whatever. But by and large, it was like, yeah, go explore. Walking to the park with him and seeing him pick up handfuls of pebbles and throw them on the slide and figure out where it went, and then wiping it all away and doing it again. Looking for different shapes of sticks and holding it up and where could it go, and telling it, oh, that looks like a warlock's wand, and because it was kind of crooked and whatever. Hey, you're a wizard. Like that's what we got to get coaches to explore all the time. How do we see someone being inquisitive and kind of breaking out the billows and fanning the flame on that spark of creativity and imagination? That's the key.
I love it. Duey, thank you so much for coming on. Again, I couldn't think of a better person to finish our season with. I love that I'm leaving all of our listeners with this conversation to really think about between now and the time our next season starts in January. And I'm hoping that we can all kind of reflect on some of the things that you and I have discussed today to help coaches, to help players, to help families have a more positive experience through this junior tennis thing. And just thank you. Thank you for taking time.
Can I share one thing before we go?
Absolutely.
I am up before most people in the world, and therefore I see your podcast episodes generally when I go on YouTube and it says 0 views, and so when it goes from 0 to 1, it's usually me. So I see it all the time. I think everybody should. I get great information from it. all the time. And I think everybody else should pay attention to it as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're going to have contact information for Duey in the show notes on parentingaces.com or wherever you're consuming this podcast. So if you want to reach out to him, we will have that information available for you. Also, I am, as I said, reposting many of his articles on parentingaces.com, but I'll have a link to Duey's website as well, so you can dig deeper and pick up some of the things that we haven't reposted yet. And yeah, I always learn from you, Duey. I appreciate you so much as a friend and as a teacher, and wishing you continued success in your pursuit of helping us all be better humans, better tennis players, better tennis coaches, better parents, and wishing you all the best. Happy holidays to everyone. We'll see you in January. Have a great holiday season. Thanks so much for tuning in.